I'm trying to get my presentation on. It's not coming on. I can't. Okay, great. Got it. Um, okay, we're going to go ahead and start. Good afternoon. I'm Veronica Blackhat. I'm the Assistant Attorney General for the Natural Resources Unit. I'm Tuabajna Aja and Toy Lini Bashichi na Kaitine Dashachain Kitlachini Dashanale. I also have Irvin Chi with me, and he can introduce himself as well.
Yat eshe urban chin che Torichin in Shinots and the Jenny Buses chain, Kia Ani, that's Nando, the buses in it, that's a chain.
So we're going to do, oh shoot, this is not the right presentation. The presentation, we're doing a presentation on how to get a residential lease, and I'm trying to figure out, let's see, I need help here. This is not the correct one. I always have an issue with this. I'm having issues. I need you to help me. It's not letting me. I have my presentation and it's not.
We have our IT person there. Veronica, if you want to go on mute, I'm going to just share with folks what the lineup for December looks like.
Do you want it on there?
No, I don't think so.
What do you want?
You're not on mute right now. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. Apologies. You think we'd have these technical things down by now, but unfortunately, we're lawyers and technical things are not our area of expertise. So I apologize and thank you for your patience. I have my little co-pilot here with me today. You want to wave? Say hi, son. Yeah. But I did want to give you a preview since we have this little bit of time. Shay Ethel Branchin Sha Bin Pachwani Nashla Nakai Bachis Chin Sitna Jene Dasha Che Ado Nakai Dashanella. I'm the nation's 13th Attorney General, previously served as the 11th Attorney General as well. And just wanted to share with you the lineup for December. So we're trying to do monthly themes. And of course, the month of November and a little bit of December is focused on home site leases, residential leases, things of that nature. And then for December, for December, we're going to be covering water. So December 8th will be Indian Water Rights 101 and the Law of the River. And then December 15th is the nation's Utah water rights. December 22nd is the nation's New Mexico water rights. And then December 29th will be the nation's Arizona water rights. And we did present this previously while we were just starting to learn how to use this platform for this purpose. But these will be more refined presentations. And I'm going to post that information after this session. So look for that soon. I'll hand things back over to Veronica.
Hi, so we'll go ahead and start with our presentation then. As I indicated, this is going to be a presentation on the residential lease process for Navajo allotments. And the regulations governing the residential leases are found at 25 CFR Part 162. So the key steps in identifying or getting a lease is to identify an allotment, and then also to consult with the appropriate BIA agency office to determine the allotment number and the landowners. Thereafter, the applicant would fill out an application for a residential lease, and the packet, the lease application packet would include the landowner consent forms, and then also an uncertified title land status report, the name and address listing, and then also a listing to registered land surveyors and archaeologists. The applicant submits the residential lease application for review and approval. So in terms of the location that would be identified after would need to be surveyed by a licensed land surveyor, and then also archaeological survey and clearance would also need to be conducted. And that information can be obtained from BIA in terms of who they have identified. I believe they also have a listing similar to what the nation provides for individuals when they're trying to get home site leases. So who approves residential leases? So this is set up a little differently than, home site leases, and it really depends on what agency the allotment falls within. So within Fort Defiance, Shiprock, and Western Navajo Agency, the regional director is the one who approves the leases. And then also within Eastern Navajo Agency, it's the superintendent who approves the residential leases. So in terms of the applicant responsibility, the applicant, the prospective lessee must directly negotiate with the Indian landowners for a lease, and also contact landowners and obtain consents. So you have to have at least one witness for each signature. If the landowner is using their thumbprint, then that requires two witnesses for the signature or for the consents. So the required percentage for consents for undivided trust or restricted interest is as indicated as follow. So for landowners, if there are 1 to 5 landowners identified, then you need 90% of the consents. And if it's 6 to 10 landowners, it requires 80%. And then 11 to 19 landowners requires at least 60%. However, if there are 20 or more landowners, then it requires at least 50% on the consent requirements. So the required consents will be determined based on BIA's records on the day your application is submitted to the BIA office. So the number of landowners may increase due to probate, gift deeds, or land sales. So it's important to submit your application as soon as possible. So I'm seeing a lot of questions. As I indicated, this is going to be specifically for residential leases, which are approved through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And this does not apply to home site leases. So the focus of this presentation will just be on how to start the process. I mean, there are other areas that we're not going to cover, but it's mainly to focus on the applicant responsibility and what would be required in terms of, when you submit your application. So in addition, the applicant responsibility, the prospective lessees and landowners must prepare the required information and analysis, including information to facilitate BIA's analysis under applicable environmental and cultural resource requirements, and also to ensure that the lease complies with the requirements for residential leases. The prospective lessees or Indian landowners must submit the lease and required information and analysis to BIA for review and approval. So the next question is, how does a prospective lessee identify and contact individual Indian landowners to negotiate a lease? The prospective lessees must submit a written report specifying that it's for the purpose of negotiating a lease to the appropriate BIA agency office to obtain the following information. So as I indicated earlier, depending on what agency this falls into, then, you contact either Shiprock, Fort Defiance, Western, and then if it's an Eastern, then you would go to the superintendent. But they can provide the names and addresses of the individual landowners or their representatives, and also information on the location of the parcel and the percentage of undivided interest owned by each individual landowners. Upon request, the BIA can assist prospective lessees in contacting the individual Indian landowners or their representatives for the purpose of negotiating a lease. And also upon request, the BIA will assist individual landowners in lease negotiations. So once the application is submitted, the applicant will submit, to BIA a complete application with the packet, which should contain the landowner consents, the documentation of whereabouts unknown and deceased landowners, an accurate legal description, survey plat, and a map of definite location, and then also the archaeological clearance and report. So under the residential lease process, BIA's responsibility is to review the application package and supporting documentation, to also determine consent calculation, and then also request for biological clearance from the Navajo Nation Fish and Wildlife, and also to request for a categorical exclusion. They also request for appraisals, and the appraisals will be conducted by the Bureau of Trust Administration Appraisal and Valuation Services Office. So that's the BTFA, and AVSO will provide BIA a copy of the appraisal report and certification. So in terms of approval, they prepare and ensure the residential lease contains all the stipulations contained in 25 CFR 162, and they are required to issue a decision within 30 days if a package is complete. However, if it's incomplete, then they reach out to applicants and request additional information. So then they also approve and distribute the residential lease, and then also record and approve the residential lease with the BIA Division of Land and Titles. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague Irvine so he can provide this information in Navajo.
According to we're having a little problem with the sound control. The residential lease of the BIA So a large issue say AAD kaya hagi a sabahos dollar. Khayt ay kaya hat edo khar kaya saado khayla bijbaka akoho ado shi ju abia shi bihyatido bishal ito didat hagi jub number da halon leo shine lozi bikaya hagi ado khay landowner dan azishi ebijit da bakako a large application da bidi inal so atsa sigido leshigi sahigi residential lease of the atso atsa bin yahaj ito bin ya nal so jigi so DT arnal so sigi bedast ongi the landowner of the Ningi large Bakagi to be consent be not so she not so hundan de land no consent form of the not so ski not kiwashi biji kaido lito aroshi baston ido liti application ado bkiona biji hol yagi bijdo ado le khalnal sosba na chegishi esto shi bijbkhal so ado dinal sosi nas taso bia shine lozbe ado idno esto ila tlado shi so ado khad kayas ado kwashi kaya aji dindan shinigi aji no shinto nal soshi kaido li ado kujo archaeological station edo aji to no shinto no shinto ado shi nal soshi shi baston edo li ado kedo gi kudo ni ya hol nagi خیلاتی خیلی لازی بنال سوسیگی جو لیس residential lease of the جو خیلی لازی کدیز این که هگی a lot of land of the نیستو اوبی لندا ایلیگو خیلی لازی لی 45 ستو shipwreck تو لی تو سیدی جو آج خیلی لازی regional director of the residential lease land isle. Adonle Eastern GA compound GA superintendent GA basla land isle. Ado Jukwagi di Hashinan sosni nigi basla di het not sosigi to application of the nesto het ido listo bedas nodolich a di Hashin kaya hier die okay die gishin kwaye yitlkhat atolich ado shi yado gato ich hato to kwaye ne shabela di khesno ko kashi yaltido ya yaltido bela alloshi alon shinda nal sosigi to witness of the shi busy kaido listo bishi busy say kaido lit alo witness shi bikedo busy do lit alo ik edil chogo le lots of it in hand nit of the neo na kyo witness shi as busy ido litko ado di jo lai la do se gi jo that and the sao use the car sa ha actually ho di kaya pe bo ne gi jo ad kui go nas atin jo percent of the 90% nas atin jo ko aside or slow da ko consent gi shi okay do le alos thalo neznako kaya hibe betaharnio goshi se bitin joko 8% gi 80% joko shi yoke do le ado tatsata to nas edata choko kayagi bijit abakago go something chi a ko percentage yokido li ada natindo ba ada yokido 50% ash nido consent ishi tsaro kido li juto di to be a she which not in the banal source the record of the nigi which not in the she but not a baby husband or let go le not so the lani lady consent of the nigi coho you're gonna need this much of it no as far as percent she arabasalla ado navakedo gi the let's see the nido ado kaya be visit of kagi the not so skishi so not so skishi pia bit not so sashi ado environmental of the nido cultural resource sashi as not so si but that's only Juju Nalsos and Jigi Hoko, which was la Dinalsos, other days dot eto, so how long ago, but that's strong ago, the avocation ye ko had or via Asian which could not or less. A ko di Benalsos Gishi at a beltran, she caught all day illido little, the residential lease kid or less. Ado China le China lozi chi azbia chol ito egit not ito alo chi egi la dosle ito da tsudo yi la dosle ado navigator gi je le bahazno do nitle khayla Lassi, Lenigito, Ado contact Ado Nishida AHA 25 CF or 162 JA Shine Lozi Bebes Ani GA Ajay over Kako Ado Lassi Dabdi injury in Alsosi to you Ido Lito Yokido Leshi via Bananasla Le Aji to Nalsos Hana Jeshi Kado Nito Boltado Lish Ado Had Kaya Hokido Helabakaya Bakai okay so this seems to add in Alsos Ibakada Nishakado Ado the Krishi the visit of a Kagi landowners done lineage Ashita a tapel Tadolish Ilanda is slingy hot ela ado potato lana gi dinat sauce nigi for shine lozi bikaya yoke digi lease so the home site lease to ado rather wait or leases the sheep dal taho okay dinat sauce le bia ebch hodor le ligi dinat sauce we bel tado le ligi to kaya bebo ni bish kagi as he last thing nat sauce consent of the she las she bel tado le ado di khagi bahat so do khai la kaya yoki do ado ishindo bokado lis koho lisa ho jutna to the hada hada da shi hollodo ado bijit aido bahas no aido da attendas lino da shi not so si bokada no so ishin to not so si bkia in data ado kaya banal so legal description land survey of the nation ishin as ishin so but not the Shino, trapel tratolish. Ado map of the Nico, not so straight, so which had his arba, the sogi, the Bocate, ishin trahi, mabido, trapel tower, trayan datolish. Ado archaeological plants. The art clearance as the his anil hallo Lashi landa islido in also sigido the report ishita edo bel tadole. Ado hadit overjan ta aje shine lozi bas lagi ju kwagi ju bebe hodni bin na go she na sosgi no into at an sos ya jicha gido lenal sos das only at any ju benas belanda ito yo legi ta she at any his lo she biani other no in ligi Julie Cavan, baby, the hot negi landa is ligi Hane la ko landa is lido. Ado balas ko trends of the nito to RG fish and wildlife to bas lavo. Ko and Hodina hot or Kodoba Hildali, Hashida hot, Eoshi sensitive area, though moderate sensitive area, Judabadi, Nadi, Yego, Kayahagi, Kwagi, to Yocho, either to Leshigi, Kwae, I Abaski, Junle, Behazani, but a Halo, a Koshi, Junle. Siden altloshi da dole children say that she baba hata hasani bin nago but abata has bin nago ayu ya kwagi kechido iligi ayu ya dasti ado sahoe ayu arts iso you that da haloni bin nago to ayu ya to abahasti moderate sensitive area to the so out of a kedogi at so baski joko ayat ehle hashi shabatwido ati by kayachos ido legends or go quagi aha hot ido. Ado saho tan do basa long it's okay. Quagi kayagi chido ba hoti. Although Craggy ABI that a categorical exclusion of the cat X of the Nido, it's a finding of no significant impact to a not so the Halodo Hadito a Craggy, Kayahagi AD which he now to the door. Yahot Eto Kaichido, Eba Hotiko, Didi not so Sigichi a tapas also. So ado na bakedo gi ya be lana ilehigi approval ado kwashi na sosi stores do lito ado she do na kinlo she jo residential lease gi at ende be his ani betri la go she ya ya chicha do ado she nail ido kwashi Bansa Kitcher be lado letats, Edo that's the way lado lesa. Ado Craggy to as a basla landa shaggy tatin to Craggy babes a lado leso. The residential lease of the Shine Lozi Kayagi Craggy with over basla. Kunza shi hat oben question at all di anidia kodo rankaya yachigi alo shi tazia yanana tido le shi ado in jana splito de nakacha akha.
And the mandatory provisions, let's see, the mandatory provisions that a residential lease must contain. So applicants can either use the lease forms that BIA has available for a residential lease, or if the applicant does not want to use the form and work on drafting their own lease, you can get assistance from the BIA upon request, and they'll help with drafting a lease. But in terms of the provisions that the residential lease must contain. All residential leases must identify the tract or parcel being leased, and then the purpose of the lease, and then the authorized uses of the lease premises, the parties to the lease, and then the term of the lease. So under the regulations, the term provided is a maximum of up to 50 years. So it breaks it into two 25-year terms. So the initial term would be for 25 years, and then with an option to renew for another 25 years for a total of 50 years. And then the lease must also contain the ownership of permanent improvements and the responsibility for constructing, operating, and managing permanent improvements. It also has to identify the payment requirements and any late charges, including interest. So all residential leases must include the obligation of the lessee to the Indian landowners, and are also enforceable by the United States so long as the land remains in trust or restricted status. And there must not be any unlawful conduct, creation of a nuisance, illegal activity, or negligent use or waste of the leased premises. The lessee must comply with all applicable laws, ordinances, rules, regulations, and other legal requirements. If historic properties, archaeological resources, human remains, or other cultural items not previously reported are encountered during the course of any activity associated with the lease, all activity within the immediate area of the properties will cease, and the lessee will contact the BIA and the tribe with jurisdiction to determine how to proceed with appropriate disposition. So in this instance, for historic properties and archaeological resources, that would be Historic Heritage and Preservation Department, and they would work with the BIA to determine how to proceed. Also, BIA has the right, and at any reasonable time during the term of the lease and upon reasonable notice, to enter the lease premises for inspection and to ensure compliance. The BIA, at its discretion, may treat a lease violation or any failure by the lessee to cooperate with the BIA's request to make appropriate records, reports, or information available for BIA inspection and duplication. Unless the lessee would be prohibited by law from doing so, the lease must also contain that the lessee holds the U.S. and the Indian landowners harmless from any loss, liability, or damages resulting from the lessee's use or occupation of the leased premises, and that the lessee indemnifies the U.S. and the Indian landowner against all liabilities and costs related to use, handling, treatment, removal, storage, transportation, or disposal of hazardous materials, or release or discharge of any hazardous material from the leased premises that occurs during the lease term, regardless of fault, with the exception that the lessee is not required to indemnify the Indian landowners for liability or costs arising from the Indian landowners' negligence or willful misconduct. So the BIA will treat any provision of a lease document that violates federal law as a violation of the lease. So as I indicated, under the regulations, the BIA has 30 days to make a decision regarding a residential lease. That's if all the required documentation is there and the packet is complete. So under the regulations, it does provide for options for appeal. So if a superintendent does not meet the deadline for issuing a decision on a lease, the parties may file a written notice to compel action with the regional director. Thereafter, the regional director has 15 days from receiving the notice to issue a decision, or the regional director can order the superintendent to issue a decision within the time set out in the order. The parties may file a written notice to compel action with the BIA director if the regional director does not meet the deadline noted above. So this is that's the first step. So if that's unsuccessful, then you would proceed to the next one. So, the parties can file the written notice to compel action with the BIA director if the regional director does not meet the deadline noted, which is the 15 days, or the superintendent does not issue a decision within the time set by the regional director, and the initial decision on the lease is with the regional director, and he or she does not meet the deadline for such decision. So once it's elevated to the BIA director has 15 days from receiving the notice to issue a decision or order the regional director or superintendent to issue a decision within the time set out in the order. If the regional director or superintendent does not issue a decision within the time set out in the order, then the BIA director must issue a decision within 15 days from the expiration of the time set in the order. If the BIA director does not meet the deadlines noted above, then the parties may file an appeal with the Interior Board of Appeals. So I know there were some questions regarding contact information, and this was what I was able to locate. So the different agencies are identified in the contact information for each. So like for Crown Point, that would be Eastern Navajo Agency, and that information for maps would be done through real estate services. And I've also provided the contact information, and the same for Fort Defiance, Shiprock, and Western. So as I indicated, so Fort Defiance, Western, and Shiprock, it's the regional director that approves the leases. And then for Eastern Navajo, that would be the superintendent. I'll also make sure to put the presentation on the DOJ's website, and then also include a pamphlet that BIA has developed for, it's just a one-page pamphlet that contains information on the residential lease process for Navajo allotments. So I'll go ahead and turn this over to my colleague Irvine so he can explain this in Navajo.
Ya nanat tawis kudoe ya dini ya benitlas nagi ad nakashobe benitlas na doles. As far as approval, judi belana ilation I khele yela doslito khit o bela azni do ibika bela azni shi as not sociata han station in doles. Ado kujigi fine lozi ajbenal sociani tegi for residential lease of the she 25 CF or 162 out of base on she bikau alia do lish ko do bikau shin hot ado lish ado aji jebes ani di be la do lish di je aji ba bia bas la so ne lozi ko behis ani jo decision da bedi na khit o la liya la jo be la le wa ta si thatin ji shi kwa shi bahas ado le shi kwa be la do le shi di na so za ta hi ni te gi so hat liya do ta bi ya ni le lo shi thatin ji ba lado ko shi be ye la le do le edo da do ye la le do le ado be las leo go shi ado shin da di na so zigi shi biche holna do le di da so zigi ado shin shin da na so ya ni te gi di residential lease with the di le ben yagi shi ya ta shi binal sos kada ya do recorded aliado ishin bia ishin with their land title and records. J as she chahonat or the doshi as she attended on the store. Not so sa folded the bada ya she by record yi bahalon on this. Ado di do na kin lingo go Chudri I see behz ani bikago I see di do o shashni do bikada I see do na kin lino I see behz ani gibenal so sigi bahallon do le shobudas tongi kayagishi han so hat so gi kayagishi nal so si trapas do ado Ado kagi bez ani gichu kagi adatsi ko chu kwai chu kaya chudo ilichi kagi authorized use of land premises kwai chinal so sigi do best ondo chu kwai trashi bitno tatole ado Khashin sosi nigi she aji tra benal sosi largi application that ada she das ondo les ado khanza go ti bez ani ba las ni do les ko joko kodo ni ya chin 50 years abdi ne akonde na kidishin be la do les hot all now go ako nakigo 25-year term sheets ado vacato she not so not no ado nabik she 25-year term nana bananit so golis not din slashi just not tatin she you see no tatin she nakigo jo babilas ni do a condition at so Atsagi natin slashi nakhji sa belado ado kishinal so sinar no into nado kato enab ana kogo natin slashi nakhigo benane do so to letako ata kinitso go she aslati nakhido letako to dinal so si ebetno tato let belaz ni ogo ado Kwashin khashin be bohni hishin kwagi khaila illa ni asa to atenecho hawan mazda hawan da tsu kwagi ni to adna to le be le bitahli khawt don le sunit anje shi atende kwashi JACA basla AAD khashi kayachido ili yokidi adoshin AA behz anishin azbana hatnati di nalieto hasidat eshin jo besa bata halini to jo best on la to kushin shi bahalini do le kanis do le di term of the lease gishi other sindon zillo the she late church the dido interest the she the dust on level other di anana koti do na kin lona so ski si the dust on the best on the ligi tragi le khashida eo shi jugi sinat so sigi at di not so si da elnigi betas tono de ligi consent that da do kayabna nishini that do ho that shi bitnas di but she bit not that a konda ado shi ka ban sa ke so le ligi the house a lado benda is ada to yen bashin di kaya chido ilido ba kida kon le do ya hegi jo la le bi ga ida le total tabanda hanila do le do yat heda ye oyubits na de na do jo ba haya da do di kayagi do le atlo da na le do yada hegi trash da badin waste da badin even oil da so ko do ban has ani jo do ya ba da jun ne to shi as o ba hun sen do shi bin na kwa to na ba shan to so diat energy behis an shi you had to obey that to she just do the to be she what has ado the kayagi hadat so go so as a clean lozi behis an the hallo le abia ejo the regulations CFR the one of ado legally requirements of the that is so quite is on issue ado kagi to son leo hasida the she hot a one that hallo do akashi na the yoda na do ado kitan le tanabna be dawal echi hodat hegi cultural items of the nido sacred site of the kwagi jo kwagi hallo da shi kwagi hawan atle hoda ha isin ja a hoda jo kwagi ya jo keri bila su go di da da bitishin kero da kwagi so akashi nan shi na hosdo listo ado shi ne lozi shi be khanna do lesti kwagi o ko ni kwasen yo lian de la yam bi da ni kecho to sao si na si ta o yo de le ne sa yugo to ya ba da has na o da ta ho da shi bi ni na ni shi so bi ya ba la do o da be na an so da shi hit o da do ni so sta do ni do da ne ayu ko jo den ne ko jo la a jo ba na hotel na do nicho what got that I had a she wants the so the hot oil bes ani she dan illa to kwa shi ba hun zin do le shi bin ya die bes ani da dia ado na hon na gi je na so sti no ta gi shi de los bian hin de gi je sao cho di bes ani do be kan sin da do be in sin da no da je na so su chen da na ho di la ji shi do jo ba san ne so di shi ne lo zi yo do ya be ka ho on go da shi kai na so su gi shi ha shi khizot o le ha da zi do li kai di lease violation die na sosgi lease na be lazli do be kan do be later o do ya to be ben has all hat no da shi kwa shi hat o shi na sosi khizo shi az shi ne lozi ba hoti ho di be has ani shi bi ka shi da ya shi ben na go so lease violation da be shi kwa basilado kwa shi to na so sa to hoti ji zo shi jo be ba hoti jo aji yego his ani but even in nago so the federal laws the RJ laws his ani 25 CFR gun is so even in nago so this is a year but also she day ya so to the general plan so to hazo ba yati to hazo بشنا so she to je kai ba ta hon ya ta hansen da bi shi bin ya gi shi bin na di to bes ani da gita so a ji hanan ela a do che kai gi bas la da di a shi ne lo zi gi the creature bas la do che kai gi na ni di ani ni sha yi la di de le like a shipwreck to a city that although 45 straight as a regional director the as a lana other Eastern GA superintendent of the as Basala. A Kodit or a superintendent the GA Basala Lech Ola or Nitla, the regional director Shintlo is Basalacho, the creature Shinjo by that Itati Nalsosi, Tiani Tegi, the Nix Insto, Adobe Ladi, Leshigi, Jokwagi. A 45 store shipper to city the hot J regional director J Slata J ko she body out of the ko it o a be di la di that's it or that's to be la di jo to a she be his anibal ya la ho ato Kainana a bia a azo director a regional director do how loud or illeo slata chinigi a ju kwagi see a superintendent she a will kushit oil kalna do lis kwagi a dit onas lagi a kwagi a slata chinigi a hit oda the baby bansen ki so ben deal so a lot dictator say that's do be lot dictator a coho other issue abo beshin bas lashin base anishi ikwe lado little be lado the shin kwashi bikahon ido lit a di little gishi kwashi baby kan to shi kwai ikahon na to lit ado kushine lozi ginana what happens if BIA does not meet the deadline so kwai 25 CFR 162.3631 so the BIA director regional director is la that's the best ani the lito be la di that's that's to be la di so be basla ado regional director edo that superintendent dit odo do bez ani illeho to be lando le li edo do be lando le ligi la il kanda jo kwagi shi be lahan do le ako shi BIA director to basla they had to make a decision within 15 days to do not can logo di bez ani be la di le dai so that's a bit la di le sla ta chini isha bez ani do bit li so ado le BIA director ado do ye lao da hit o khado ni so khebedate do so as bez ani nana ya kwai Basalado le ligi jo as do ye last o da go do yen o do le slata la is kan da go interior board of Indian appeals of the so she in le appeal she ho which she are bigani after the as she it ocean illegal kon so she nakashigi then classes not of ado akedi chunle nalso le njigyo da had the schlichten so go as a regional director of the nigi lado as a shipra agency as BIA as been done so as a basalado the residential lease of the nigi as a lala to 45 agency though as a do be basala the regional director lana to the as to one that's be last need or that's be last need slata as a 45 slata as 45 agency BIA basala 45 ba a shipwright or quite BIA so quite shipwright BIA ado Western Agency Tuba City as Regional Director Tuba City BIA Office Krabat Hazao. Other Eastern GA Superintendent EA Lana RGEA Eastern Agency BIA as because Ado as a not so seat on Geo Shabelado the Hawanda Junzo the AHA as a it oi Landa actually so Tin Le Shina Ganoda Le Shibra Agency in the Gano Shibra BIA Dina 45 Agency be Nagano 45 Shadina Ado Tuba City Agency be Nagano the AA or Tuba City BIA of Sodina Ela Nana